Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us. We'll be doing this talk predominantly in English and also Spanish, so if you haven't got a headset, then please do so now. I'm stepping in for Sara Hermann, and I'm joined here by Claire Feeley from Jupiter Artland, Aaron Cezar from the Delfina Foundation, and Rocío Aranda-Alvarado from the Ford Foundation. We're going to sit and get to know more about each of the institutions they're working at. So first, Claire, what is Jupiter Artland, and how does it, as a private endeavor, figure within the public domain?
Great. Thank you. Just a quick note before I dive into that. Thank you to Sara for inviting all of us. I met Sara in the Dominican Republic earlier this year, where we spoke together on a panel about resistance. But just before I was about to go on stage, I was struck down by some unknown illness. And Sara rushed upstairs, came back down with what she described as a tonic. She would not tell me what it was. It was very strong, and I went on stage and I felt fantastic. So it's very mysterious that Sara isn't here today, but she's here in spirit. So when she invited us, I think it was partly an interest in all of our programs, but we realized something in common, that each of our institutions doesn't fit very easily into a box or a category, and Jupiter Artland is no different. It's not a museum, neither a permanent collection or a gallery program. And at Jupiter, we purposefully refuse to have a fixed constitution, and instead we configure the institution around the artist or the artists we're working with. So what does that mean? It means we're constantly moving towards the artist. We redeploy our resources according to what that vision of that artist demands. I very much enjoyed Maria Elena from Perez Museum, who spoke earlier at Foro about curatorship. And she described artistic ideas like frequencies, and that an idea demands that you take a position in relation to it, whether that is one of proximity and closeness or of distance. And I think that's doubly true of Jupiter Artland. But I realize I haven't actually answered your question. So at a very superficial, or not superficial, at a basic level, Jupiter Artland is a site. It's about 120 acres between Edinburgh and Glasgow in Scotland. We work with artists over a long period of time, concurrently with several artists, on our permanent collection, with a view that one artwork per year is unveiled to the public. Just to very quickly give you a sense, I won't speak in depth about these works. In 2018, the permanent commission was by Philida Barlow. It was her first permanent outdoor work, a process that she described as horrific. In 2017, it was with Pablo Bronstein. And in 2016, Christian Boltanski, who produced this piece, Animatas, of 220 prayer bells mapping out the night sky on the day he was born. Part of this work was the landscaping of the lake. And I just have to mention these little guys who decided to take up residency within Christian Boltanski's work. And each year they pull apart the work in springtime and build their nest from it. So I have a long-term relationship with Christian Boltanski insofar as I have to remake this work every single year. We also have changing exhibition programs. Tara Donovan, Joanna Vasconcelos, who presented her work this year, And annually, we award an early career artist of any age financial support to make their first outdoor work, realizing that making work outside of a traditional gallery context is often very demanding, both in terms of mental and emotional resource, but also on a very basic level financially as well. So Ali Duke was our artist for 2018. When I started at Jupiter Artland, my first ambition was to rethink the public and live program around the idea of assemblies. So annual assemblies that will be responsive to a pressing issue of today, and that are fluid in format and can appropriate aspects of a music festival, a film program, a debate, or a protest. So 2018, obviously, in Ireland, where I'm from, and also the UK, my adopted homeland, has seen an utter rethinking of how the law intervenes in personal relationships, the law and its relationship to love. And we took that as our theme for our 2018 assembly, Romantic Crash, with presentations by the likes of Natalie Sharp, Healthy DJs and Ratty Bye Bye, and a late night stage curated by OH141. Jupiter is just 10 years old, so we're a young arts organization, and in many ways, the live program has helped to kind of make our commissioning, make our publications speak to each other, which is something I'm hoping will continue.
Great. So you've already mentioned that when starting at Jupiter Artland, one of your main priorities was education and public program. Education is now a really big priority within your overall mission. So can you maybe elaborate more on the kinds of initiatives, education initiatives you're working with and how you approach it?
Yeah, when I started, I was the head of exhibitions in the art department, and my counterpart was a very talented woman, head of learning. And my first move was to collapse this. My colleague was not very happy. She wanted her own department. But to me, it felt utterly artificial. There is just one program that we work on in Jupiter, and although it has been very challenging for both of us to collapse those distinctions and to start moving into each other's worlds and collaborating in a much more fluid way, it's been challenging. It's challenged our preconceptions, our comfort zones, but I return to this idea that the institution configures itself around the artist. An example, we're working at the moment with the Brazilian Indonesian artist Daniel Lai. His work, he is nomadic. He has no studio, so everything he makes is in relation to a context and a site. All of the materials that he uses, whether it's social relations or physical relations, exist and come together for his work to affect a change either in social or physical realities. Some of you might, I believe, maybe just closing. His work he's been working on a project in Colombia, in Santander, looking at how different types of kind of platforms evolve and change over time. And when he came to Jupiter, he was, being from the south, he was very interested in how far north we are, and how very, very cold it is. And he was looking at what resources we had and what he could do with this. But he mainly works with non-binary people, and he set up several meetings with groups across Glasgow and Edinburgh to start thinking of different economies that he could make around mushrooms, fungus, which is something that is really abundant when you live in a damp, cold place like Scotland. So he's brought what originally could have been a 2-month exhibition project, he's changed into an 18-month collaboration with a lot of different actors to start gathering testing out ways of extracting pigments from mushrooms to produce a series of garments that can be sold to sustain some of the work at Glasgow Women's Library, a remarkable institution in Glasgow. I'm aware of time, so I will...
Okay, well then, quickly, how about we talk about, through this program that you're elaborating on, Jupiter Artland really does hold the role it provides education for groups of people who have limited access to education. So can you maybe elaborate on the ways in which you make this possible, working with these groups for inclusion?
Yeah, again, going back to where I met Sara and a lot of you here, was in the Dominican Republic at Tilting Access, which is a pan-Caribbean conference which addresses the fact that connectivity is very, very difficult in certain geographies. And in Scotland, it's largely an island nation. Recently, the Shetland Islands have been lobbying on any map that you see of the United Kingdom. In the top right-hand corner, there's always a little box with the Shetland Islands, because a real map couldn't fit the Shetland Islands in, because they're too far away. So the Shetland Islanders, their feelings are very hurt by this fact that they're always put in a little box. But the reality is, connectivity is extremely difficult. Scotland is a very low population area, and in terms of the social inequality across Scotland is vast, and activity it's so difficult to make activity happen outside of urban centres like Glasgow and Scotland. So the challenge we set ourselves, actually I'll just play this short clip. So we're working with the Scottish artist Rachel McLean to change some of these dynamics, but this is a short clip from her work about Scottish independence.
Let's look at the reserves that your country would have available to you. Take gold first off. There's about 310 tons of gold that the Bank of England's looking after. What share of that do you want?
Well, normally the way on independence to do these things, there's a well-trod path, many countries have become independent, is you have the same percentage of assets and the same percentage of liabilities.
So you want about 8% of the 300 tons of gold?
That would be the normal way to put it. But incidentally, a country's resources, we've gone past the mercantile period. Country's resources aren't backed by...
How did you get it north?
Many countries, incidentally, hold their reserves in common, through the Bank of International Settlements and other things.
Oh, so you might leave it at the Bank of England?
Well, we've got plenty of vaults in Scotland, but a country's reserves aren't...
What's there going to be, some sort of armoured train or something?
See, I can't believe you said that.
So this is a project that we're working with Rachel McLean, and she wants to change the dynamics of growing up in Scotland, the fact that connectivity is such an issue. So we have recruited 20 young people from across all of Scotland who have expressed a desire to make concrete change. We're just at the very beginning of this project, so do come back next year and I'll tell you how it's going. But the group have identified that they want to work in Glasgow. The south side of Glasgow has no cinema. So we're working to take over the Govan Hill Picture House, which has variously been a Eurotrade worldwide importer, a sofa and curtain centre. But we're trying to change what space is by changing the function of what goes on in that space. So we had our very first event, I'd rather be a cyborg than a goddess, screening event in Govan Hill. But the idea is that we're going to keep on pushing the limits of reality and see where the journey takes us.
Super, thank you. Aaron, let's start at the beginning. What is the Delfina Foundation?
Like Claire just mentioned, it's very difficult to articulate exactly what Delfina Foundation is. There are things that we do that come to define us. There's a place in which we are situated that also gives us a certain recognition. Yet and still, what we've tried to do as an organization is defy some kind of definition and to work as an alternative model for supporting artists and for looking at the relationship between art and everyday life. Physically, Delfina Foundation is a house. It exists in central London, about 200 meters from Buckingham Palace. So it's situated near the home of the royal family, very close to Parliament, the seat of the UK government, and it's also positioned at the middle of a major crisis right now in Europe, being Brexit. So our situation, our location of being there at the seat of government and bringing artists to live in this house and to make work, to think, to research, to eat together, to provoke, is important right now for what we're doing. And in a year, it might be something else. What I want to do right now is show you a very short 1-minute video about Delfina Foundation. And a very beautiful translator is also going to translate the words in the video for me. But it just gives you a sense to get of the space and also some of the activities, and then I'll continue after that.
Founded in 2007, Delfina Foundation supports artistic exchange and experimentation through residencies and a dynamic public program of events and exhibitions. Located in the heart of London, we host up to 8 cultural practitioners in residence at any one time, providing private accommodation in addition to a communal kitchen, library, and living space. We aim to support the whole arts ecosystem, offering residencies for artists, curators, architects, and even collectors. Around the residencies, we host a dynamic program of exhibitions, talks, performances, and open studios that explore the relationship between art and global concerns. Through partnerships with small-scale initiatives and large institutions and biennales, we take what we develop here in our home out into the greater world to vast audiences. At Delfina Foundation, we think of ourselves as a family, nurturing the next generation of cultural leaders.
Before it restarts, to quickly recap, there are 2 main strands of our program, one of which is residencies, which we offer not only for artists, but also for curators, writers, architects, and sometimes even art collectors, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. The other aspect of our program is the public facing. And like Claire mentioned, these 2 aspects are closely intertwined in how we engage with the public through the residencies. And a starting point is always those who are in residence, so the artists, the curators, the writers, the architects, the collectors. As part of our public program, we also co-commission work by these practitioners. And we try to create challenging and critical works that analyze where we are today. So, for example, and sometimes, I'll just say, sometimes we're ahead of the time, as art always is in terms of being ahead of the curve. There's one quick project I'll just mention, a project by a Kurdish artist called Ahmet Ut. And the project by Ahmet became known as the Silent University. Silence being often a position of passiveness, but he wanted to take it as a state of action And he worked with a group of asylum seekers and migrants in London in 2013. So before we got to the major kind of migrant crisis that we see today, not only in Europe, but throughout the world. And what he tried to do with this project was to give value to the knowledge and the practice of these migrants and asylum seekers. Because in their home country, they may be a nuclear scientist, but once they migrate, they're unable to practice their profession. And as a result, the economy is losing out on the knowledge of these individuals. So the Silent University became an alternative platform and educational project to respect the value of these migrants. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, great. So you mentioned that the starting point, by and large, is the work of the residents themselves. Your residency program, as we've seen here, is also largely thematic, whether it be themes from issues in contemporary art or everyday life. So perhaps you can also talk to us about those themes and how that also structures the program. Yeah.
Let's try this. Oh, that sounds a bit better. So one of the critical and interesting things about our residency program is that they're shaped around themes. So these are ideas or issues in which we bring artists into residency around. It's not a straightforward open studio type of residency. We invite artists around particular issues. So for example, one of which is the politics of food. So we invite artists from all over the world. We've had 82 residencies of artists looking at issues around the production, consumption, and distribution of food. And the outcomes have taken place in community gardens as much as they've taken place in a formal exhibition gallery space. Another theme is the public domain, so looking at public space and how we enact ourselves in public. And public space not only being the physical space, but also being the virtual space. And how social media has also created another platform for engagement, for coming together as a community to protest, to celebrate, in ways in which public spaces that are physical sometimes do not actually allow. And one of my most recent themes is something called collecting as practice. Yeah. And I know that Sara in particular wanted me to talk about this program, because it is the first ever residency for collectors, art collectors, alongside artists. And it came about through our theme, Collecting as Practice, but also our concerns about how the art world is structured and how the conversations that we have in certain pockets of the art world do not connect across the whole ecosystem, and how this ecosystem is very important for us to take forward some of the ideas that are created here, but also to affect what's happening out there in the real world. So the program Collecting as Practice looks at the psychology of collecting, the philosophy of collecting, and the politics of collecting. And in this case, we're looking at value in a very different way. Often when, particularly in this context, we talk about value in art in terms of the financial value, but we're trying to recognize the social value of the intellect, the skills that have gone into producing artworks, but also the value that these artworks bring to us as a community in terms of acknowledging certain narratives that have been forgotten. And as a result, we've also worked with a number of institutions, including Tate in the UK, Victoria and Albert Museum, looking at how these collections have emerged from often colonial period, and how value in this case has to really be reinterpreted for new kind of contemporary concerns, but also how artists can be at the forefront of providing institutional critique to help us understand objects in museums in a very different way. But most importantly, because I know time is running short, the idea of having collectors and residents alongside artists is to reestablish connections between those who produce and kind of consume art in a very different way, and to make it not based around an agenda. So the collectors aren't choosing the artists to be in residence with, and because there's no choice in how that takes place, it means there's no agenda there. The collectors live in Delphina Foundation, in the house with the artists. There's no distinction between one or the other. But the collector's often staying for a short period of time.
And to what extent do they actually come together? Is it on the question of what is value and exploring different definitions?
So they do come together, in a very simplest way, in the kitchen, because it is a house. So they're making lunch and dinner together. They're sharing those experiences, but we do create opportunities for a formal discourse between them. But for me, it's the informal interactions, like when we go home as the staff, and the collector and artists are there at night dealing with the fire alarm or dealing with, the washing the dishes. That's where the real interaction takes place, I think, among them.
Great, thank you. Now we're going to move over to you, Rocío, and to your program at the Ford Foundation. So could you let us in on specifically your program titled Creativity and Free Expression?
Thank you. Buenas tardes. Gracias a todos ustedes por estar con nosotros. Me llamo Rocío, trabajo en la Fundación Ford en Nueva York y le quiero dar las gracias a Sara Hermann por invitarme y a mis colegas acá a estar conmigo aquí en esta conversación. Yo voy a empezar un poco antes de la Fundación Ford, solo indicando, antes trabajé por muchos años, ahí se fue una imagen parece. Trabajé varios años en el Museo del Barrio como curadora. El Museo del Barrio es un proyecto yo lo veo como de justicia social, porque se fundó por la comunidad puertorriqueña en Nueva York, porque no se veían ellos mismos reflejados en los museos y las instituciones grandes de Nueva York, de Estados Unidos, digamos, pero especialmente en Nueva York. Entonces, una de las plataformas que nosotros iniciamos en el museo fue de invitar a un artista a tener una residencia dentro de las galerías del museo. Hay otros museos en Nueva York que tienen residencias para artistas dentro de su edificio, pero no dentro de las mismas galerías. O sea, en el Museo del Barrio, el espectador, el visitante, al entrar a las galerías, pasaba por el lugar donde estaba el artista en residencia, que fue muy importante porque significaba un momento que se podían comunicar el público directamente con el artista, preguntando sobre su manera de trabajar, sus ideas, su discurso. Entonces fue un momento así como muy importante entre el museo como institución, el artista como individuo y el público. Y pues solo para darle dos ejemplos, Jessica Lagunas, una artista guatemalteca, estuvo en residencia en el Museo del Barrio casi 4 meses, porque ella lo que quiso hacer fue hacer un tejido con el pelo de los visitantes. O sea, el visitante que quería donar un pedacito de pelo, un hilo de pelo, y ella con ese pelo iba bordando un textil. Y después estuvo, por ejemplo, otra artista puertorriqueña de origen del Bronx, de Nueva York, Alicia Grullón, que invitaba a la gente a hacer su propio video contando su propia historia. O sea, fue un momento muy lindo de interacción directa, ¿no?, entre artista y público. Y luego, cuando entré a la Fundación Ford, empecé a pensar en artistas que están trabajando de manera de juntar el arte o usar el arte para llegar a la justicia social. Y para nosotros eso significa liberación total, justicia racial, justicia de género. Entonces empecé a trabajar con un apoyo pequeño para una artista de Argentina que vive en Nueva York, Sol Aramendi, con su proyecto que ella desarrolló junto con técnicos una aplicación para jornaleros, o sea, gente normalmente migrantes de México o de Centroamérica que trabajan por el día haciendo construcción normalmente o limpiando casas. Y la aplicación funciona como un Yelp. No sé si ustedes usan el Yelp acá, es para darle, ¿cómo se dice? Reviews a restaurantes, es decir, si el restaurante es bueno, si la comida es buena, si el servicio es bueno, si es bonito, qué sé yo. La aplicación del jornalero funciona igual para el obrero, clasificar a los que los contratan para ver si lo tratan bien, si les pagan con lo que corresponde, si no abusan de ellos. O sea, es una forma de que los mismos obreros entre ellos comparten información sobre la gente que lo contrata y los paga, ¿no?, el jornalero. Y luego Sol me propuso un proyecto muy interesante de trabajar con 3 grupos distintos de mujeres en Nueva York. mujeres que eran inmigrantes de Nepal, que trabajaban en un salón haciendo manicure, mujeres que trabajaban como haciendo limpieza doméstica, y mujeres trans de México que tenían un salón de belleza. Y esto consistía en hacer reuniones semanales hablando con todas estas mujeres trabajadoras sobre cómo es la vida cotidiana de ellas, cuál es su realidad y cómo el arte puede funcionar para contar esos cuentos que nunca se escuchan muy poco, sobre todo en Estados Unidos. Entonces, después de esto es una forma que tenemos nosotros de apoyar al artista individual con una pequeña beca. El otro pedazo de trabajo que hago también en la fundación es pensar cómo usar el arte para llegar a la justicia social, para apoyar la democracia. O sea, para la Fundación Ford, el arte y la cultura es fundamental para la democracia, para apoyar a la democracia y para desarrollarla. Entonces, yo formo parte de un equipo que se llama Creativity and Free Expression, que es creatividad y expresión libre. Y dentro de la fundación son estos 5 puntos. Hay muchas cosas que llevan a la desigualdad, ¿verdad? Pero en la fundación nosotros nos concentramos en estos 5 puntos y para nosotros, o sea, son la gente que no tiene acceso al gobierno, poca inversión en lo que son los bienes públicos, discriminación y prejuicio constante, la economía y la desigualdad dentro de la economía. Y por fin, el área nuestro que es las narrativas o los cuentos culturales que no cambian, que no han cambiado, que dicen esencialmente que Europa es la fuente de la cultura y el arte y nadie más tiene cultura ni arte como Europa. O sea, cambiar esos cuentos para nosotros es principal, fundamental y en lo que estamos trabajando. A ver, mis notas para no olvidarme. Entonces, lo que estoy haciendo es una serie de reuniones regionales, preguntando cómo nosotros podemos integrar los artistas latinos dentro de Estados Unidos en las instituciones grandes. Entonces, para empezar, siempre yo explico, y se tocó este tema en el foro anterior, la diferencia entre arte latinoamericano y arte latino estadounidense. O sea, estoy hablando de una generación de gente que nació en Estados Unidos, que son familias de inmigrantes. Hay muchos artistas colombianos que vinieron muy jóvenes y se criaron en Estados Unidos, en Nueva York sobre todo, que han hecho su carrera en Estados Unidos. O sea, que están haciendo un arte americano que refleja una experiencia americana. Sin embargo, estos artistas y sus cuentos no están entrando en colecciones públicas en Estados Unidos. O sea, hay un desnivel, un desequilibrio en las adquisiciones de instituciones grandes, museos grandes, de esta parte del público, ¿no? Entonces, yo hago estas pequeñas reuniones regionales. Hice una en Santa Fe en agosto para la Bienal de Site Santa Fe. Hice también una reunión, voy a hacer una ahora en enero en Miami, en el Museo Pérez. Y en abril voy a hacer otra en el Museo de Bellas Artes de Houston. Y preguntando cosas muy sencillas. Aquí estoy ilustrando un poco la diferencia entre lo que llamamos Latinx, para no hablar de un género específico, ¿no? Sino que entre géneros también. Es una confusión entre un grupo nacido en Estados Unidos o criado en Estados Unidos, que pasaron mucho tiempo en Estados Unidos, y artistas latinoamericanos que viven y trabajan acá en Latinoamérica. Entonces, solo para darle un poco una breve historia, que en los museos grandes principales de Estados Unidos, una manera de que ellos buscan de generar una conexión entre ellos y el público de inmigrantes latinoamericanos es traer muestras grandes o organizar muestras grandes que muestran, por ejemplo, 30 siglos de arte mexicano, 20 siglos de arte latinoamericano. Esto es muy típico, ¿no? Y dentro de ese discurso, de esas exhibiciones, no entran los artistas latinos de Estados Unidos. O sea, es algo específicamente fuera de Estados Unidos que se está mostrando como patrimonio cultural, ¿no? Entonces yo cuando voy a estas reuniones formo preguntas cruciales como ¿cómo podemos nosotros cambiar este sistema de que los artistas latinos no están entrando en colecciones permanentes, no están reflexionados en las muestras, no tienen muestras únicas tampoco, solo exhibitions, muestras de un solo artista? ¿Cuáles son las ideas que podemos nosotros intervenir para que cambie eso? Para que eso sea una reflexión como más completa de la experiencia americana.
You've already begun to touch on this second question, which is that one of your main goals at the Ford Foundation is to showcase how the arts, journalism and film can contribute towards a more fair and just society. So further to what you've discussed, what are other approaches that you use in order to make this happen?
Para nosotros es importante apoyar a instituciones y organizaciones más bien pequeñas que tienden a ver la justicia social como algo muy importante en el trabajo de ellos. O sea que todo el trabajo, el punto de eso es llegar a una sociedad liberada y más igual. Entonces, otra manera de apoyar eso es tener reuniones nacionales también. Ahora en septiembre, fines de septiembre de 2019, vamos a hacer un reencuentro nacional de distintas organizaciones con las cuales hemos trabajado, las cuales hemos apoyado, para contar cómo ellos trabajan en función de la justicia social, cuáles son las exhibiciones, los planes de adquisiciones, las relaciones con coleccionistas. En el fondo, educar al público sobre cómo llegar a la liberación y la democracia.
And leading to this, you've had an extensive curatorial career working with artists from the diaspora and in varying museum environments. So how would you say that these different experiences have contributed to your approach at the Ford Museum?
Yo trabajé muchos años en distintos museos, incluyendo el Museo del Barrio, y con esa experiencia me di cuenta cuáles eran las narrativas principales que venían de los museos más grandes y cómo funcionaba el racismo institucionalizado a un nivel que realmente mucha gente ni siquiera se da cuenta que es lo que constituye el racismo. Entonces, en Estados Unidos, sobre todo en los últimos, diría yo, 10 a 15 años, se han preocupado mucho las instituciones grandes de repensar sus formularios de cómo ellos se relacionan al público. Y eso, ver eso, entender eso, aprender de esa forma, me ayudó mucho a repensar la programación, de hecho, del Museo del Barrio, pero de otros museos y otras organizaciones más pequeñas. Y eso ayudó mucho en repensar para la Fundación cómo ayudar a las organizaciones a buscar a gente de color, gente trans, mujeres, para participar en la programación de ellos.
And now we're short on time, so short answers. What's next, whether it be a new program or a new goal?
Para mí es muy importante seguir presentando un discurso público y seguir escribiendo sobre arte hecho por latinos viviendo en Estados Unidos, porque hay muy poco escrito sobre este tema. De hecho, el Museo del Barrio y unos pocos otros museos dentro de Estados Unidos han hecho el esfuerzo de recopilar un poco de esta historia perdida, ¿no? Pero seguir trabajando en esta historia, escribiendo y enseñando en City College, donde enseño, es muy importante para mí.
Tougher question than I thought it was going to be. If I'm really honest, this panel has changed some of my thinking about what an alternative art institution can offer, not just the sector, but society. And this is a little bit personal, but Jupiter has the worst website you will ever see in your life. We look like a garden centre. And you know, so naturally I thought, oh, we must rebrand. We simply must rebrand. But if I examine my intentionality around that, to do that would just be to fulfill a desire within ourselves to be more easily consumable within the economy of the art world. And that's okay, but I want to try something different. I want to take over this grubby cinema in Glasgow, and it might not sit comfortably in the art world. And I don't know how it will turn out. But I believe it's worth trying.
Great.
As I mentioned earlier, our programs at Delfina Foundation are thematic. And one of the new themes that we're introducing next year is around art, science, and technology. This is not a new terrain at all. But one of the things that I've been really concerned about when I think about art and science collaborations is that they're often quite naff. And I don't think the scientists and technologists really learn from the artists, and I don't think the artists really learn from the other. I think they use each other as a medium for some other means. And so we just did an open call for artists to apply, for the public, really. Artists largely applied, but asking them to apply with a problem that they think art, science, and technology could answer. And in which case we're going to use the residency as an incubation period of bringing together different types of practitioners to try to solve the problem. And the outcome, we're very clear, should not only be for an exhibition space, but it could be an app, as you were just pointing out. I thought that was fabulous. That could be invested in and rolled out globally. And it could be something that does go into the commercial market. Actually, I'm not opposed to that either. But what I'm really trying to do with this next program as well is think very differently about the relationship between artists and patrons. So as I've gone out into the world to try to raise money for the project, a lot of our patrons have said, actually, I'd be interested in investing in some of these ideas. So then the collaboration changes then. And I think that in terms of how we all operate, we have to think of new models of support systems and how we can actually think about distribution of what we do in a very different way, whether it's in a theater or whether it's in an app for, key workers.
Yeah. Okay, super. And I think there was definitely a red thread throughout all your presentations in terms of collapsing boundaries, whether it be between the collectors and the artists, and also with you between this idea of the curator and the educator. I think we have a little bit of time for questions. So if anybody has a question, Juliana always has a question, then please ask now.
In English or Spanish? I have two questions. En español, bueno, se las digo en ambos, both. La primera va para Rocío, y es que yo quiero que, personalmente, porque no sé muy bien la diferencia entre el Latinx y el chicano. Yo entiendo que el chicano es mucho más de California, y quería saber qué pasa con los chicanos desde el Ford Foundation, qué se ha hecho, y también algo, no sé si alcanzaste a estar en el panel de Patrick Charpenel, el director del Museo del Barrio justamente, y le preguntaron qué está pasando actualmente con todo lo que está pasando en la administración de Trump. ¿Qué se está haciendo? Y quería preguntarte a ti, ¿qué se está haciendo desde la Ford Foundation? ¿Cómo ven eso? ¿Qué se puede hacer? Y un poco yendo hacia esa dirección, now I'm going to go to English. I was asking Rocío what's going on with Ford Foundation and the Trump administration. And as you mentioned, Aaron, the Brexit, so I wanted to know how are all these political things, political policies, actually, how does it affect you, in which ways, and also what's going on with the refugees, because I know that in London there's been quite some issues, and in the UK as well.
Great, sure. La diferencia entre Latinx y Chicano, es muy buena la pregunta. El equivalente del Latinx, del Chicano, que principalmente son inmigrantes de México que estaban en Estados Unidos antes que fuera Estados Unidos, o sea, cuando México todavía ocupaba la mitad de Estados Unidos, o sea, generaciones de gente de descendencia mexicana que viven en Estados Unidos. El equivalente en la otra costa, en Nueva York sobre todo, es el New Yorican. El New Yorican es un puertorriqueño que por su familia llegaron a Nueva York en los años 40 y 50, sobre todo mucho para trabajar en fábricas, las mujeres sobre todo a la industria de la aguja, como lo decían. Y ese es el equivalente, o sea, ellos mismos se autonombraron New Yorican, porque para ellos fue, igual que el chicano, una posición política muy importante, una formación de identidad que tiene que ver con el desplazamiento de la isla, la llegada a Nueva York, el shock del racismo y por esa consecuencia, muchos de ellos trabajar junto con afroamericanos para trabajar en los derechos civiles. Entonces, ese es el equivalente. El Latinx como que se refiere a todos esos grupos. Uno puede decir Latinx y referirse a chicanos también, aunque los chicanos también ahora están usando el Chicanex también para no referirse al género. Y sobre Trump, bueno, es un fracaso cada día. Es un dolor leer el diario. Y en la fundación somos 6 equipos distintos, unos de mis colegas que trabajan mucho más directamente ayudando a inmigrantes, ayudando a distintos grupos a poder empezar a votar, a sacar a gente, a registrarlos a votar. Entonces hay mucho apoyo por esos casos, pero también, por ejemplo, ahora en noviembre voy a una conferencia que específicamente trata un cambio de la historia de la frontera entre Estados Unidos y México, Border Narrative Change y arte. O sea, cómo cambiar la idea que tienen los americanos del inmigrante mexicano y la visión de la frontera a través del arte.
I was born in Louisiana. So I am an American citizen. I'm Creole, which is a mix, as you know, of many different things, from African to French, Native American. I've been living in London for 16 years, so I'm a nationalized citizen. So in 2016, I voted in the EU referendum to remain in the EU and lost. That was in June. In November, I voted in the US presidential election and I also lost. So having both nationalities right now is very tough for me, I have to say. But anyway, on that day in June when the UK voted to leave the EU, there was this period of uncertainty, this cloud that fell over the country, which still remains. So it's very difficult for me to answer that question fully because the cloud is there. But I will tell you this, that also on that morning in June, when the UK voted to leave the EU, there was something that I hadn't experienced in my own life, which is white on white racism. You know, suddenly you had, the British against the Italians, against the Romanians. There was really negative graffiti all over the city. So it presented that actually the migrant crisis is not just about the other from Africa coming in, but those that are just across the English Channel who are actually supporting the whole UK economy because they're in the jobs that the Brits won't actually do, although they voted to leave the EU so they'd have more jobs. It's all very complicated. So I'm dwelling on a lot that's actually not really important to this conversation here, but to say that it's just so uncertain right now that we're unsure how it will affect arts funding, and how it will ultimately affect programming. But what it does mean for us at Delfina Foundation, and we work internationally, both with European, Latin American, Asian artists and practitioners, is that the home that we've created, the family that we've created, at the seat to the UK government, bringing together these different nationalities is super important right now. So we'll continue to do that in the face of kind of Brexit and everything else.
Great. Do we have any more questions? Nope? Okay, well then thank you all for sitting here with us for the final talk of the program. And thanks so much to you all for letting us into your amazing programs. Great.
Thank you for moderating, and stepping in. And Sarah, we miss you.